Hello everyone, welcome to Chapter 8, Part 2. Just like in the first part, I'm going to assume that your data is already entered in. In fact, I am going to pick up exactly where the first video left off. And this was the video I used with all of you for the first chapter. I'm going to widen this out so I can read everything in column A. I want to do things like the book did, and the book picks up by typing different things in these rows here than I did. And so I'm going to go ahead and delete this so I stay consistent with the book. You can choose to put it down here below if you'd like, but I just want this to look as much like the book as possible for continuity. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these 3 lines. If I were you, I would save it, save a copy, like a part 1 copy, and then delete these and keep going with a part 2 copy, which is actually what I've done. I'm going to delete those. And in cell A52 for part 2, we're going to start the process of figuring out which of the stores individually are greater than the other. So in the first one, we wanted to see, are all the stores the same? Are the means all the same? And in this case, we could say no, they're not all the same. We found there to be a significant difference in video 1. So now we're going to figure out which are different. So here I'm going to type just like the book did. Pardon my bad typing. Dierberg's versus, these are very unnatural things to type, apostrophes and so forth. Dierberg's versus Shop and Save. And then I'm going to go down 2 lines, and I'm going to go 1 over n of Dierberg's plus 1 over n of Shop and Save. I'm going to go down 2 more and go S dot E, which you remember is standard error. Dierberg's versus Shop and Save. And finally, ANOVA t-test. I want this to look pretty, so I'm going to not spill over, so I'm going to move everything over so my typings fit all in one line. So we're going to analyze the difference between Dierberg's and Shop and Save. Now before I go any further, I want to make it clear that we are only going to do Dierberg's versus Shop and Save in video part 2. We're not going to do Dierberg's versus Schnucks or Schnucks versus Shop and Save. In the end of chapter problems, you will have to do analyze each versus the other. So there'll be 3 sets of comparisons. I mean, you'll do Dierberg's versus Schnucks, Dierberg's versus Shop and Save, Schnucks versus Dierberg's. Well, that's a repeat. So you will have to do this 3 different times to get all of the differences. And we're just going to do 1, because if you know how to do 1, you know how to do all 3. So you can repeat this for the other 2. So we're doing Dierberg's versus Shop and Save. You can do Dierberg's versus Schnucks and Schnucks versus Shop and Save after that. And once again, in the problems you'll have to do for homework, you will have to do all 3. And if I show you how to do 1, I have complete confidence that you could figure out how to do all 3. Okay, so how do we solve for this first line here of the equations? We're simply going to do what it tells us to do, and we're going to go equal sign, open parentheses, 1 divided by 28, which is our number, our n, which is right here. These won't always all be the same. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. So be prepared and to pay attention and make sure that you get the right ones in there. Plus 1 divided by 28, close parentheses, enter. Should be 0.07. We'll clean this up to 2 decimal places. Next, standard error of Dierberg's versus Shop and Save. So this is going to be equals square root, open parentheses, D48 times D54, close parentheses. Now, if you're using a Mac, since we did the ANOVA already in your special software that I gave you the link for in the last video, if you're using a Mac, I don't know for a fact if the ANOVA comes out exactly the same, all the numbers are in the same places. So as I'm doing this, make sure that my D48, in this case my D48 is 1.23, matches your D48, and my D54.07, well, that's what I just calculated, that should definitely be the same, but make sure that you're linking to the right numbers. Next, the ANOVA test. This one is going to be equals D40, and just to show you what D40 is, that's going to be the average or the mean for Dierberg's. Oh, and I'm going to put a parentheses in front of that. Okay, open parentheses, D40 minus D42, which is the mean for Shop and Save, close parentheses, divided by the standard error of the two, which is D56. Once again, make sure that the links line up. You'll have the right numbers. If you're in a Mac, you'll have the right numbers up here somewhere. But it's just a matter of making sure that you click on the same one that I'm clicking on here in the PC version. Okay, so the ANOVA T test came back to 2.54. Now we need to take this one step further than the book just for clarity's sake. And we're going to compare that 2.54 number, that's your T, like we've been doing all along, that's your T. We need our critical T. We can use the chart in Appendix E of the book, or we can do the formula for it, which is actually what I prefer. So I'm going to go equals T dot inverse dot 2T, open parentheses, probability is 0.05, comma, degrees of freedom. And we can do the degrees of freedom in our head here. It's not too complicated. It's just like we've done before. We're going to add up all of our n's. So 28 times 3 is 84. And since there's 3 groups, we'll subtract 3 from 84 to get 81. So 28 plus 28 plus 28 minus 3. And that will give us 81, close parentheses. And that gives us that number. We'll slide it over for 1.99, which is a little more accurate than what the book gives us at 1.96. Okay, now we have our two numbers that we need to compare right there, 2.54 and 1.99. And we can say, and the T stat at 2.54 is greater than the critical T at 1.99. So at this point, you should know what that means, that we are going to reject the null hypothesis and accept the research hypothesis that there is a significant difference between the means of Dierberg's and Shop and Save. So Dierberg's is 2.44, Shop and Save is 1.69. We could say that there's a significant difference between those two because 2.54 is greater than 1.99. Now, if this came back instead of 2.54, if it came back at 1.54, we would accept the null and say there's no difference between the means. However, there is a difference between the means, and since Dierberg's is obviously higher than Shop and Save, we could say that Dierberg's prices are significantly higher than Shop and Save. So let's go ahead and type that in for clarity. Since T is greater than critical T, we accept the research hypothesis. of course, then that means that there is a difference. And so we can say Dierberg's prices are significantly higher than Shop and Save. Okay, so that's all there is to it. Chapter 8 doesn't have a lot of calculations. It just has a little bit more of a complex way of thinking about it. I mean, it's just a little more advanced than the other things we've done in terms of understanding. And so you will need to do this for the sample problems if it asks you to do it. You may have to do this for all three possible combinations and analyze whether the prices are significantly different at all three stores rather than just these two. So once again, as I explained in the beginning, we just did an analysis of the means between Dierberg and Shop and Save, and for the other problems you then do Dierberg and Schnucks and Shop and Save. Okay, as always, please contact me with any questions, and that is it for Chapter 8.